Good morning and welcome to Morning Java, brought to you as always by our friends at the Get Go Cafe and Market. I am joined by not one, but two Dale Lollies. He has a picture of himself, which looks like the most ridiculous thing you've ever seen. Why don't you explain, first of all, why you have a picture of yourself hanging behind you?
Well, first of all, I'm not in my house. I'm actually in the studio for
Ah.
ESPN 970. This is how greatly they think of me here at ESPN 970. They've got a picture of me on the wall. If you look at the computer over here on the computer screen, the screensaver is a picture of me.
Wow, that's fantastic. So when we bust him later on as having a thumbtack in his hand because he was actually putting that up himself, we'll discuss that in another subject. The Steelers' schedule is out. It's as official as it's going to get for the foreseeable future. It doesn't come with any asterisks. It doesn't come with any apologies. Let's just talk about that aspect first, Dale, before we even dive into because just seeing dates attached to things, that has to feel a little bit good, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you have to make the plans for the season to take place, while also having contingency plans in place in case it doesn't. But the people screaming and crying about this, I saw people on Twitter that can't believe the NFL is moving forward with their schedule. Folks, this thing was supposed to be out 2 months ago. They've waited already on this. They had to come out with it at some point. You have to plan for a season.
Yeah, and this is it's getting to the point where you had to have some the regular season dates for sure solidified because of the network arrangements. They have to answer to a lot of different networks, unlike other sports. They had to put this out they just had to put it out. It's crazy that this would even come up. I will say though that out of this whole schedule, the one game that I would doubt is taking place, and this has little to do with any fear that the rest of the schedule is going to go off as planned, is August 6th against the Cowboys in Canton. That's the one, because I could see a situation where we've already seen it from Cooperstown in baseball where they're saying, we're not going to bring in 20, 25,000 or however many would come for 3 Steelers going into the Hall of Fame, and they could just put the whole ceremony off.
Yeah, and the Hall of Fame has some contingency plans that they're working on for that as well. Maybe doing it during the regular season, the induction, or pushing it back to the spring, or even doing them all next year, which would be just a tremendous, unbelievably big class. They'd already had this thing split into 2, and all of a sudden now you're going to put all 25 of those guys in at one time. That would be a little nuts, or 26. So we'll see what happens with that. But this would be the year if you want to play, or nobody wants to play in the Hall of Fame game. But if you're going to play in the Hall of Fame game, this is the year to do it, because we're not going to have we're already not having OTAs. We're not going to have mini camps, and those teams that do play in that Hall of Fame game would actually get an extra couple of weeks of practice that the rest of the teams in the league would not get.
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. I mean, if in that regard, both the Steelers and Dallas are a little bit fortunate. Although, honestly, Dale, I wonder if, as the summer goes along, if the NFL won't adjust those rules because of the missed, rookie mini camp, OTAs, and everything else that they should be doing in the summertime. Now, the first thing anybody looks at when they look at the actual schedule is going to be the opener. The Steelers, of course, never open at home. They haven't done so since 2014, and they won't this year either. They'll be opening in East Rutherford against the New Jersey Giants. That's where they play. Everybody up there gets offended by that. You put your team in Jersey, not us.
Yeah, I that's an interesting opener, and it's kind of like going to ground zero of COVID in the United States. I mean, they've got the majority. New York City and the New Jersey area have more COVID cases than any other country in the world except for the United States.
The
reported cases.
And it's not just the opener. For the record, 2 weeks before that, the Steelers are in the same stadium playing the Jets, the other tenant there. And, you mentioned ground zero, and one thing I can guarantee you will be the case there. Let's assume I don't know. Look, I mean, we can't assume much of anything here, but you're not going to see fans there or whatever. What you will see is the NFL and the Jets and the Giants. I can promise you, paying some sort of homage to the medical workers and everybody else, and not to mention the lives lost. You mentioned 9/11. To date, 4 times as many people have died in the New York region as what died on September 11th. So I think, we're going to be there. We're going to be witnesses to, some really, really emotional, moving stuff. The Steelers are going to be
Hopefully we'll
part
be
of
there.
that.
Hopefully they let. I mean, I don't know that they're. I see all these reports and differing versions of what this is going to look like for us as reporters. Are we going to be allowed in the building?
Yeah,
Are we going to be allowed? Are we going to be forced to do post-game interviews via Zoom? I don't know.
yeah.
I don't know that anybody knows at this point.
Well, whether we're there or not, I mean, the scene on the field and what gets played out and what the Steelers experience being inside the stadium. Again, not so much for the preseason game, although that's the one preseason game that matters, the second to last one. The Panthers game is the one, of course, that never matters. But the Giants game, I mean, you're talking about some pretty significant emotions that are going to be going on there on top of everything else,
Yeah, and that will also be the game at which a certain quarterback steps back onto the football field for the first time. I don't know if we see him in the preseason, but if we do, both times we see him are probably going to be at the Meadowlands.
Yeah, well, really, Dale, out of 5 preseason games, man, I have and there's never been a precedent for Ben not participating at all in the preseason. You know what I mean? I would have to think he'd get out there at some point.
Yeah, I would think so as well, just to kind of let him go a little bit. But, with the quarterback, it's going to depend on him. What's he do at training camp? I don't know how much we're going to learn from that. What he's capable of doing. He says he's able to throw and do everything that he normally does. We'll see when we get there.
Okay, so I think we're on the same page here that, we're skeptical as to how many fans, or if fans at all, will be in the early parts of the games. Dale, the one that I can't even picture: Steelers versus Ravens, Thanksgiving night.
No fans. I can't see
in Pittsburgh.
That.
Empty yellow seats. No, just no. And I'm not being one of those people that's making football bigger than life or whatever. It's just, I don't see all of this holding up that long.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
The NFL is going to do what it's going to do. Everybody else be damned. They're going to play their games because, quite frankly, they're bigger than everybody else. And, I think there's going to be a lot of pressure put on the governors in those states to get these games played.
Yeah, and it's not just Pennsylvania either. The ones that already have started making some noise, in particular, Governor Newsom in California, where, of course, there's, a couple of 3 teams based in that state. So there's going to be some decisions and some tug of war and some, needing to prove some things along the way. But I'm still looking ahead to that game against the Ravens on a lot of fronts. And actually, as you look over the whole schedule, Dale, it's easy to circle both October 25 and November 26 with the Ravens. But, within there, right before that is a game against Cleveland here in Pittsburgh.
Myles Garrett.
Yeah. Whoever would have forgotten about Myles Garrett and everything else that occurred between the Steelers and the Browns last year? Trust me, people like me and Dale will be reminding you of it all week long leading up to that game. And I can tell you this, too. It's showing here on my schedule. I'm looking on the screen as Sunday at 1 p.m. Somebody's going to flex that one.
I'll bet that one stays at 1 o'clock. I'll bet you they don't move it. I think they're going to want to kind of downplay that. I think the league will keep that at 1 o'clock. And that's the other thing that you notice, the Steelers with 4 primetime games this year, and 3 of them are after Thursday, November 26th, Thanksgiving and on. So they host the Ravens on Thursday, November 26th. Then December 13th at Buffalo. That'll be pleasant. And then, Monday, December 21st at Cincinnati for an 8:15 game. That'll be real pleasant as well. You and I have both been to games late in the season in Buffalo and in Cincinnati, and that can get treacherous.
Yeah, it can, and it's not just we're not just talking about the weather. We're talking about the environment. We're talking about, in Cincinnati's case, objects being thrown onto the field. Uh, it's that's the part of the schedule. As I look at this schedule, like one of the first things that jumped to mind, actually the first thing that jumped to mind, just being reporter, is, well, we're not going to be traveling all that much. Although we knew that going into this,
Right, right.
even so, the travel that happens is later on. You don't. The Steelers have had issues, as we all know, and have documented, going out to the West Coast or making longer trips and not succeeding. Uh, how many times do they even got? How many times do they have even a significant trip? Jacksonville. Uh,
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the first half of the schedule before the bye, the longest plane ride is to Nashville.
yeah,
You
which
know,
is an hour and change.
you know,
Yeah,
right after that, coming out of the bye week, they're at Dallas, and then they go to Jacksonville, and everything after that, it's at Buffalo, it's at Cincinnati, it's at Cleveland.
yeah,
Cleveland,
and Dallas is the longest trip, and that's a 3 hour flight as well. So travel works. I mean, is much friendlier this year for the Steelers, and the fact that the second half feels like it's a little bit more loaded than the first half, I think bodes well for this team, because notwithstanding what happened last year when the Steelers didn't have a quarterback, they've traditionally been a terrific December team under Mike Tomlin.